Hello, my name is Elroy Reed. I am your moderator for the Urban Townhall Talk Show. This is a program that examines the news and issues that are relevant to the African American communities of Lake County and beyond. We have an illustrious panel joining us tonight. Anita Hanna,
Hello,
Adam Broad,
everyone.
Adam Broad, Mitchell Hester,
Howdy.
William King, Larnell Farmer, and the Honorable State Representative Rita Mayfield. Dr. Jacqueline Thomas will be joining us momentarily. Tonight, our topics include Derek Chauvin, his trial, the verdict, and the sentencing. We will also discuss stimulus programs that are designed to help the average resident during this difficult time called the COVID-19 pandemic. Former police officer Larnell Farmer will lead us out with a discussion of the Derek Chauvin trial. Mr. Farmer.
Good evening, everyone. Excuse me. I remember before when we talked about the trial, I was saying that I didn't believe that Mr. Chauvin or former officer Chauvin would be convicted, because my belief was all it took was the pretty much the selling of just one juror. And so I was completely shocked when he was found guilty, for one thing. And then the second thing was him being found guilty of all three charges. And so I talked to Mr. Reed today, and I talked to Mr. Hester today, and we had gone over this a little bit. But again, I was completely shocked. I was glad it happened. I think it was more than deserved. And now I'm looking forward to, what was it, another about 7 weeks now before he actually gets sentenced. And then I listened to an interview on 60 Minutes. It was actually broadcast yesterday, and I watched it today, of the AG in Minnesota. And he was saying that his job, they did a good job, which I believe they did, the prosecution. But he was saying that his job is not to make a statement, or I forgot the exact words that he used, but he's not looking for Mr. Chauvin to be used as an example, meaning that he was saying that he did not want him to get, or to believe that he should get the maximum sentence, which I found surprising, because I think he should get the maximum sentence.
Absolutely.
You know, because I personally, I feel he did commit murder.
Yes.
And it wasn't in the first degree, you know, you can argue that, but it definitely was a second degree and all of that. But again, I agree with what happened. It was atrocious. It was earth-changing, but in the whole scope of everything, I don't really see anything changing, because as we've seen since Chauvin was found guilty, all the other countless police encountered shootings of African Americans that have happened. And so here we are, you know, what, a week, maybe a week and a half later, and we're still going through the same thing. Yeah,
they seem to be escalating. We're seeming to see more and more every day.
Absolutely.
Correct.
Unless they make an example out of him, it will continue to happen. The issue that we had, yes, they found him guilty. Everybody celebrated for a day, but Linnell hit on a very important part, the sentencing. Because if the sentencing doesn't fit the crime, then that equates to a slap on the hand. And that slap on the hand then empowers all of the other bad apples out there to continue doing what they are doing, saying, well, nothing's, even if I get convicted, I'm not going to do any time. They're going to send me home on a leg monitor.
Let's ask this question. What do we consider would be a slap on the wrist versus an appropriate sentence? Because I'd suggest everyone watch that 60 Minutes interview. It was very fascinating, because Ellison's point was, in the end, every being we're talking about is a human being.
Yes.
Right. And so, is it 40 years? This is me now. Is it 40 years? Is it 30 years? Is it 20 years? What is that? What is enough? And see, understand, it almost, it doesn't matter what the sentence is. I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth, but if we look at what just happened in North Carolina, with
Yeah.
all the stuff that's been in the news lately, you would think that any police force with an iota of common sense would make sure that they would not find themselves in a similar situation.
And
So how
furthermore,
does it continue to happen? It continues to happen because this is baked into the American psyche that this has never been a problem before. Why is it a problem now? Until that gets turned over.
yeah, and you know what? It's so ironic because on the end of the Chauvin trial, the very day that they called the verdict, there was another police shooting.
Mhm.
What they say,
10 miles down the road.
10 miles, and in the same in Minneapolis, or I think it was Brooklyn Center or something. Yeah, right down the street.
Mhm.
And then you turn around and you get the one in North Carolina. And so I too have been watching. Well, as a matter of fact, I stayed glued to the TV for the entire trial. And the prosecutors, in my opinion, did an outstanding job of presenting the case. Yeah, it was long. They brought in experts and everything. I think they did an excellent job. Okay, but one of the things that really, really caught my attention that the prosecutor was saying, it was at the beginning, and he talked about the sanctity of life and the preservation of life, and about how Black humanity is on trial. Okay, where we are people too, we're human beings too. Anyway, I saw after the trial, and a few days ago, I caught a show where they were talking about, it was about racism, right? But they changed racism into, and this is powerful, the indifference of the consequences. That he had an indifference to what his actions were going to do. He didn't care. And they talked about, it was prompted by the picture that they saw when Derek Chauvin was he had looked up at the crowd and his eyes were like just blank. They were just blank. I was interpreting that as like just the evil look. But once I saw that special, I understood. Okay. And they said that the indifference to the consequences is almost, if not worse, than the racism and the white supremacy.
Well, Anita,
Right. He didn't care that he took a life. It meant nothing to him.
Right. Let me break in here for just a quick second. We're joined by Dr. Jacqueline Thomas. Dr. Thomas, we call her affectionately Tara. Thomas, thank you for joining us. Adam Broad had raised his hand. He wanted to make a comment. But before he makes that comment, I'm wondering if either Mitchell or Larnell could articulate the exact charges that Chauvin was found guilty of, or anyone could do that.
Well, he's found guilty of 3 charges: second and third degree murder, and then manslaughter. Okay,
and
none of those charges involve him making a willful decision to take a life. Okay,
So that would be first degree murder would have done that, right?
Exactly.
Now I saw a documentary on ABC that showed where where George Floyd and Derek Chauvin worked at the same nightclub
Right.
at the same time.
Right.
And Chauvin was outside and Derek was George Floyd was the inside man and Derek was Chauvin was on the outside. So they did know each other.
Yes.
So it could they could have made an argument that it was, connected because he didn't know him.
And you know what? As I was watching the trial, Mr. Reed, there had been, talk about that they knew each other, right? And from that club that you're referencing. And I couldn't understand why that was not in the prosecution's argument.
I absolutely understand why it wasn't in their argument. They were laser focused. They were going to make sure they made their case about what they had the evidence on, because that's what Ellison said in the 60 Minutes interview. He said, look, people were asking, why didn't we do this? Why didn't we do that? Why didn't we charge it as a hate crime? He said, look, if I had any evidence to suggest that he had called Floyd a name of any kind, or if he had this manifesto out there of any kind that was against Black, made it racial, he said, we would have brought it, but that was just a distraction if I had brought it up without having that evidence. Okay. So he made sure the jury did not get confused. And
they stayed focused on getting, and they wanted to make sure they got a conviction without muddying the waters, which is fine. But to say that, to give him a lenient sentence, even for manslaughter, because any one of us on this thread, if we were to commit manslaughter, none of us would get a lenient sentence.
Absolutely.
Well, Mr. Farmer went back off, because how many times do people get the maximum sentence? Every time
if you're black or brown, pretty much every time.
Absolutely.
They give it to you if you're black or brown, they're gonna throw the key away on you every single time.
But wasn't Mr. Hester, wasn't there a charge with aggravated because of those minors that were involved? It was something, one of those charges
that was,
I thought, included aggravated something.
I think maybe that was the manslaughter charge because the children were present to see it.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
But none of those, I'm just talking about in no way did the state ever try to say that this was a willful, he went into the situation to do this. Okay, but like you said, and that was a perfect comment, they don't recognize the consequence of their actions. And so as far as he was concerned, there was nothing that he was going to do to get himself in trouble. It didn't matter. I don't need to worry about this. But what Mr. Ellison said was this too. He said, look, let's be realistic. He said, all throughout this nation, we know that, and the history proves it out, the evidence proves it out, that if you're Black, if you don't have the right clothes, if you're not in the right neighborhood, all of these things, you are going to get in trouble compared to someone else that is Anglo and they may not have the right clothes. And they said, but even if you do have everything perfect and on point, it can still happen to you as a Black man.
Right.
And so we know those things are true. So is 25 years a lenient sentence? I don't know.
Right.
Absolutely.
We got people on, we have Black men on death row for
crimes they didn't commit. Let's just go there. For crimes they didn't even commit.
And also, if they did, it wasn't as heinous as this, what Derek Chauvin did.
How many police officers do we have in prison?
On death row, 0.
imprisoned.
You know, right.
Adam, you wanted to say something a while ago.
Right. It's just maybe the only relevant thing I have to contribute to the conversation.
Oh,
But our Illinois, I'm on the board of the organizing board of our Illinois Revolution, and we are co-sponsoring, I should say, we are organizing to gather support for HB 1727, which is the Bad Apples and Law Enforcement Accountability Act, which will end qualified immunity in the state of Illinois. So I put a link in the chat here for everybody that's with us on the Zoom call, and it's also on my personal Twitter at Broad Coalition. It's at our Revolution Lake County Twitter at Orlakeco. That's at ORLAKECO. And you could click on that link and see if you want to send a note to your representative in the General Assembly. It might be.
I clicked on it, so I'll keep it. Does it advocate individual police?
It's removing
Immunity
the
or-
qualified immunity, which is one of the obstructions that the legal system has for
Right.
prosecuting.
Well, here's my question though. Is it what does this bill talk about completely doing away with it, or does it
Yes.
mirror one of the federal provisions that talk about making
It
the
completely
police
removes
department?
qualified, no, it completely removes qualified immunity. It does away with it in the state of Illinois.
Oh,
That's what the bill does. It is Representative Tarver's bill. The bill is on second reading. He's been told to hold the bill because we have several Democrats that don't want to vote for the bill. We already know the Republicans aren't going to vote for it, but we have several Democrats, I'm going to say that again, that are scared to vote for the bill, saying that
So
they're
let me ask this question.
individuals
Really,
in the Naperville, DuPage County, other places like that are saying they're afraid that if they vote for the bill, that their constituents won't like it. Now, never mind, these are the same constituents who came out in the street during the whole Black Lives Matter movement, you know, marched and yelled and held up signs and everything else. But now that we're asking to actually do something with accountability, we can't seem to get any movement. So
what is the
the
bill
bill as it
again?
is today is not advancing the way it should. The only way we're going to get it to advance is if we can get some of these moderate, or I'm never even gonna call them moderate, some of these conservative Democrats who really should be on the other side of the aisle. Unless we can get them to vote for this, it's not going anywhere.
What is the House
What the
bill?
bill is, yeah, I don't know exactly what is the bill?
it's in the chat. He put it in the chat. If you
I
click on it,
checked
you
the
can
chat.
pull it up. And
I don't have.
Well, you maybe came on after I posted it. No, I didn't
okay.
post it. It's also on Twitter at ORLAKECO at Orlakeco.
So-
That's our Revolution Lake County. It's on my
So-
personal Twitter at Broad Coalition.
So are we correct that right now qualified immunity pretty much says that no police officer can be civilly held accountable for what happens to a civilian? Is that
Oh,
essentially
that's
what
what
it
it is. Okay, thank
That
you.
is what the bill does. It removes qualified immunity within the state of Illinois.
removes that?
Right,
So
for
I
all
got, here's
peace
the question
officers.
I have for
all
everybody.
Peace officers.
There is
All
also a
peace
federal
officers-
effort,
Right.
which I know is being advocated by Representative Corey Bush, who completely rocks, by the way.
So what happens in the case with the young woman who lost her life in Ohio?
Right.
It doesn't apply to Ohio. This is for the state of Illinois.
But
So,
I'm just,
in the state of
that
Illinois-
situation happened in Illinois.
Well, that brings to the forefront another issue that I wanted to bring up. On this documentary that I was watching on ABC, the concept came up about universal police regulations.
Mhm.
For instance, if Illinois institutes something, what about, you got every municipality has a police department. So you've got thousands of police departments. Everybody got their own set of rules and regulations. What if the federal government created some type of standardized federal regulations for police officers? What think you?
They
You
don't have the
like
guts
idea,
to do
Mr.
that.
King, huh?
They don't have the guts. It'll never happen. They do not have the guts to do it.
There might be some constitutional issues with it also, as far as state rights and all.
Well,
Right.
they've got state regulations for everything else. That they've got federal regulations for everything else that govern people's lives.
Well,
Why
not,
can't you have state federal regulations that govern some actions of the police?
but so they really don't, Elroy. I don't think that they do. Because if they did, there'd be the tax disparity between the states wouldn't exist. So they really, they don't. But
Well,
some
disqualified
kind of
immediately could be a
fundamental,
start. That as a federal red could be a start.
I believe you should have some fundamental things that are universal across all the states. I don't disagree with that.
And
Can I,
What those
can I-
things
can I-
are,
can I jump in here real quick? Let me jump in here real quick. You got people like we're doing different things. Their expectations are different here than here. The qualified immunity doesn't apply to me, right? Because I do it the right way anyway. I don't worry about some of those things, right?
Mhm.
But what I'm saying is this. We are putting a Band-Aid on a gaping wound.
Yeah.
That's all we're doing. We're talking about fixing cosmetic things here and there.
Mm.
In order to fix it, you got to get to the root of
Mhm.
it and the basis of which it was founded upon. It's faulty foundation. So anything you create of that foundation, to me, is faulty. I was going to
Not
say
fixed.
it, but we're live.
Are you talking about white supremacy or just
Right?
capitalism?
It goes back and nothing's being addressed, right?
Sir Robert Peel.
So if we go to talk about history, let's talk about true history.
Mhm.
Let's come to grips with what really is going on here, right? Because someone has to own something,
Yes.
and we're not doing that, right?
Well, Brown versus the Board of Education was a new and innovative legislation for that time, but it was necessary to end segregation.
But
So
it
we
didn't.
need some legislation like that, that is new, innovative, cutting edge. They even had to get the military to enforce it. So we're going to have just like the new legislation that they're passing, the George Floyd policing. What's the name of it?
well, that's the crux of the whole issue right now.
Right.
That would make some changes.
Right. Right. The George.
But that doesn't set national regulations for the police, guidelines.
Yeah.
For the police.
That's what it'll do.
That's it.
They're the guidelines, like you said. They're suggestions, which, like I remember, the federal government was offering certain kinds of training so that police officers could be more culturally sensitive. And our former Lake County sheriff did not want to opt into that, even though the federal government said, "Look, we'll provide this for you." And he said, "No, thank you." Fortunately, our new sheriff.
But you're right, Mr. King. It is the foundation of this is so messed up.
Mhm.
They talk about one bad apple or a few bad apples.
But
What's the whole thing? When you say it all out, it spoils the whole bunch. So
It's
you got-
rampant.
It
And then state
does.
rep, I got a question.
Absolutely.
Is there a template that could be set at the state level in
And
reference to?
I think sometimes you have to frame it differently because you say, well, this is obviously, needs to be improved for the benefit of all the, African Americans who are being disproportionately murdered by law enforcement. But then there's people who aren't African American and say, why is this my problem? It's not, which is sad and empty, in a spiritual way. But it's also bad for cops because the bad, like you say, the bad apples, they tarnish the badge. And they make being a police officer more dangerous because people start seeing police as collectively the enemy. And that creates another set of problems beyond these senseless shootings that take place. And it erodes trust between law enforcement and the community, and it makes, like I said, it makes being a cop a little more dangerous. And you know,
But if you pass qualified immunity and you send a strong message that, hey, we're not gonna allow you to keep violating individuals' human rights. You know, we're not gonna allow you to continue to tread upon their dignity.
Well, I
You
think,
know,
and we had a conversation, there was a conversation going around, and I truly believe this, based on, you know, things I adhere to and live by. Look, you can't change anything on that while you're looking from the outside in. And so I say, if you can't change it out there, we have to, and it's just a bright idea, I'm sure others have thought about it. Look, we need to get more young African Americans, minorities, involved in policing, and let them become police officers.
Larnell, how long were you a police officer?
Uh,
I just asked Larnell, how long were you a police officer?
I was there for 23 years. And, you know, to go off of, I've been gone for a minute. I've been having all kind of technical issues. But what Ms. Hill what Anita just said, I used to agree with that about getting more of us into the field. Part of the problem is, and I think Mr. King had alluded on some of this, the whole system needs to change. And it's not just qualified immunity for police officers, it's qualified immunities for attorneys, for judges. The whole system is corrupt. So you can change the police system, and then you can go across the street to the county attorney, the district attorney, the state's attorney, whatever, and they can say yes or no. You can take that before the judge, and the judge can say, I don't want to hear it. So it becomes an issue of getting more of us involved in every aspect of this whole system. And then the entire system is corrupt. I don't believe in this bad apples, good apple thing anymore, because the system itself is corrupt. And until the system is repaired, then it's never gonna, this thing is gonna perpetuate. And we've seen, just like I said earlier, or what was said earlier, in this last week and a half, look how many shootings have happened. And I think Rita has said earlier about deterrence. If Chauvin is given the, I don't think it's going to deter anything, because as I'm sure Chris can attest to, in this system, there are those certain amount of people, you could beat them across the head, break their kneecaps, and they're still going to be defiant and say, I don't care what they say, I'm going to do what I want to do, because it's in their heart to dislike certain groups of people.
Right.
And
until
when you have neo-Nazis and Klansmen
and they're in the
systematically infiltrating government and police for decades, if not, let's say, over a century.
Correct.
You know,
why is that happening?
It's baked into the system.
We're
because
focusing.
it's money.
Can I break in here for just a second? We're focusing in on the police and the judicial system right now. But if we were to really broaden our scope, this is happening in other sectors. We just got the cameras on the policemen.
Yeah.
It's happening in employment, in education,
Healthcare,
jobs, healthcare.
Housing.
You know, this racist system that we're in is negatively impacting African Americans all over, as well as other ethnicities.
Right.
So, you know, and when you start talking about changing people's heart, how do you do that? You know, legislation is one way to force rules, but it doesn't really change the heart. It conditions the heart. It conditions people, the next generation, to be more sensitive. So we're really talking about a bigger issue than just the Derek Chauvin.
Trying to schedule a vaccination for COVID-19? No computer? No email? The Waukegan Public Library and the African American Community Partnership Group of Lake County can help. We can help you get scheduled. Appointments are available. Call 847-775-2547. Everyone 16 years of age or older who lives in Lake County are now eligible to register and get vaccinated. Need assistance getting an appointment for your COVID-19 shot? Call 847-775-2547 and get scheduled. For more resources and info, Check us out at FBAACPG Lake County.
Pope's Florist is the place for blooming miracles. We are open. We have moved a half of a block to the east on Grand Avenue. Our new location is 2116 Grand Avenue in Waukegan. We have flowers for every occasion. Special order now for Mother's Day. Pre-order by May 1st and get a 15% discount on all bouquets for Mother's Day. Call 847-263-7673. Ask for Pat or Carmen. Pope's Florist, the place for blooming miracles.
Absolutely.
I have one thing, and I'll ask Chris this. Chris, do you think policing has changed your life?
Oh yeah.
And how?
It's made me more aware of why things are being done. Actually, it's caused me a little bit of paranoia. Second guessing. Always, we talk about trust. Police officers don't trust, right? So it's hard to like break that shell now. So I was a track coach, free willing, just love life, love take trips, to shutting myself off from society a little bit. If you look now, I've got all the blinds. If it was high noon, sun shining, all the blinds in my house would be drawn.
Oh, wow.
Somebody say, hey, you locked up like Fort Knox.
And you know what I would add to that, what Chris just said? Magnify that 100 times for just being a Black officer within the police system. So what he's saying is, I can attest to that on the street, but inside the police system, in that world, as a Black officer, magnify that 100 times. So you're paranoid to a certain degree out on the street doing your job, but inside the police system, that paranoia is magnified 100 times over, because you don't know who you're working with, especially what's happened in these last 4 or 5 years. It's escalated to the degree that the races are more racist, and they're more hateful, and they're more out to get you as a Black police officer than ever before. It just seems that way. And I can only imagine what it was like back in the day when there were only a few of us, when we didn't have the rights that we have now. But it seems like all of that stuff has been eroded to we're going back to a time when we don't have those rights anymore. So when I asked Chris that question, my answer would be the same. But the thing is, how do you, and just like Adam has said earlier, how do you trust the person that's next to you that's supposed to have your back when you can't trust that person to have your back because you don't know if that person's going to have your back?
To pause for a commercial break, and then when to come back. But I want to share, as part of our agenda tonight, we want to talk about some of the programs that was developed through the stimulus package that's going to help folks. And so I want to read one of those, just FYI for the community to know. One of them is the homebound vaccination program. There's a new vaccination program for homebound seniors. If you or someone you know is unable to leave home due to their health condition or disability, please call the All Vax support team. County workers will reach out to you to schedule an appointment in your home. That number is 847-377-8130 or allvax@lakecountyillinois.gov. So again, if you can't get out, you're homebound, the county will come to you, and this is the number, 847-377-8130, and they will administer the COVID-19 vaccine to you.
The AACPG of Lake County reminds you to continue to follow the 3 W's. Wash your hands, watch your distance, and wear your mask as you decide to receive the COVID-19 vaccine. Do not let history hold you hostage. Ask questions. Demand answers. Make an informed decision about the vaccine. Register now in AllVax and hold your place in line. Protect yourself and others. To learn more about the COVID-19 vaccine and health disparities impacting Lake County's communities of color, please go to our Facebook page at AACPG Lake County.
Okay.
I want to know from Mr. Farmer, and he said that he had the same, I'm going to say psychological as Mr. King. And so how you've been a police officer a long time. Okay. And so how is it, how is the policing like when you left versus when you first got on them years ago? What's the difference? I mean, could you, I guess maybe I want to know, could you trust your partners or the police back then? And is it different now?
When I first started, I didn't want to be a police officer. I grew up in Waukegan running from the police. And the only reason I became a police officer was because I needed a job, you know? And so that was it. I went through the entire police academy, those 3 months in the police academy looking for another job. And then it finally hit me that I would be foolish to quit because I was getting benefits and getting paid to work out and all this stuff. And so when I came out of the academy, what usually happens is you go to patrol and you get an FTO officer. What they did to me, they put me on the street. And I think I had told this story before. I got assigned to a drug unit.
We're having technical
No,
difficulties.
not now.
Right.
Come back.
Sounds like a really good story too.
Come back, Shay.
Well, while we're waiting,
Later, I'm still out on the street doing that.
Oh,
There
wait,
he
he's
is.
back. He's back.
Larnell,
You gotta read the door.
Larnell, let me put you
Yes.
on pause one more time. I'm going to, this is sort of like another public service announcement that I'm going to give. And it's relating to funeral expenses for families who have experienced death in their families. And I'll just read this to you, and I am reading. There's been more than 570,000 Americans who have died over the course of the past year due to the COVID-19 pandemic. This has had a devastating impact upon our country and upon our finances. There are several new federal programs that will help us provide assistance to those hardest hit. Beginning Monday, April the 12th, so this just opened up a few weeks ago, FEMA will start accepting applications for financial assistance for funeral expenses incurred after January 20, 2020. So they're going back for deaths related to COVID-19.
COVID deaths, okay.
The assistance is limited to a maximum financial amount of $9,000 per funeral and a maximum of $35,500 per application. So please find the information at FEMA COVID-19 Funeral Assistance Program, Funeral Assistance website, or you can call 844-684-6333 for help. Now, again, this is funeral assistance. So if you've got family members who have died, and many of us have because it has struck the African-American and Latino communities disproportionately hard. I know people who have died. Well, those families can go back and get some financial assistance for those funerals. So we want to bring that.
For the number?
That number is 844-684-6333. And we're going to put the number up on the screen because this is recorded and we're going to go back and do some editing. So we'll post the number on the screen as well. But again, that number is 844-684-6333. Up to $9,000 per funeral, and a family can get a maximum of up to $35,500 per application. Okay, let's get back to our programming.
Yeah, and this.
I just wanted to ask Mr. Farrell and also Mr. King, because you're both you vote for law enforcement officers. I think, and I know I did, I had a false sense of security when I started seeing chief of police that were Black. You know, North Chicago had a chief of police when I first arrived here. I know in, I think Chicago, there is a chief of police who's Black. I think that tends to give you, Waukegan as well. Okay, and that tends to give you a sense of comfort. I felt like, wow, if the chief of police is Black, and every time I see the chief in Chicago, or Chief Brown, he's always speaking on behalf of the public. Should we not believe that that makes a difference if the, you know, if the police departments are getting better? I mean, I think if I see a chief, if this man can elevate himself, and it sounds like there's quite a lot of stuff going on in the department, but if you can rise to that level, does that say that things are getting better in the department? So I guess I want to ask that question.
And you gotta finish, Mr. Farmer, your story. You got cut off.
No, and I'm sorry. What I was saying is I went straight to a drug unit, and the first day they took me out over to Webster, Miss Hannah, and they gave me $25 and say, go out and start buying drugs. I'm like, what are you guys talking about? And so that was supposed to last for 2 weeks. It went into 6 months, and I'm out there, and it's over 100 some odd people that I bought drugs from at that time. And then a lot of these people I went to school with, I grew up with, and all of that stuff. So I made a lot of enemies really, really quick. And so it just
That's
went
rough.
from there.
And they put you back into your own community and did that. They
took me back when I finished that assignment. That was in April. And then they put me on patrol, and they took me down to the projects, and that's where I did my FTO training, right in the Utica projects at that time. And so, and I remember one of the first days when I started on patrol, and back then we had to get out of the squad car. You know, you go out and check in, you check the squad car to make sure there's no damage from the previous shift and everything. And I'm sitting in the car doing some paperwork, and this white lieutenant walks up, and he's screaming at me. And I didn't hear him for some reason. Then I heard him loud and clear. He said, get your Black ass out of that car and do what I tell you to do. I'm like, whoa. So it was like an awakening then, because I was kind of sheltered in that drug unit, because working on a unit like that, it's a close-knit group of people watching each other's back. So when I went to patrol, it was that awakening that, whoa, here I am back in Waukegan. I'm working with these same officers that I used to run away from. And so I did that for a year. Then I was opening in that drug unit, and I went back to that drug unit again. So what I'm saying is there's a difference with who you're working with in what type of unit, because on patrol, it's crazy. I learned that really, really quick. But in a smaller unit, you have the crazy people, but there's still a semblance of watching each other's back. And so now where I am at this point in my life, I couldn't honestly tell anybody Black to go into policing without having somebody telling them what you should expect. You know, and then to answer Ms. Tower's question about a Black chief, the problem that I see and the problem that I've seen is when you rise to that level, there's some point you've got to be political. And what I found is you can't assimilate, because once you do that and you lose who you are, you're bought and paid for. Right. So it could be a Black police officer that's just is pro-Black, away from the department, but on the department, they're just a police officer or a police chief. And they don't care about you or I any more than they care about anybody else, when it shouldn't be that way.
You know what, Ms. Tara, I'm going to answer that question also. And I would think that if, let's just say me, because I can't think about nobody else right now, right? So let's just say if I ascended to leadership and I was the sheriff, I would hope that's because what I bring to the table. I hope that because of everything that I have experienced, how I've carried myself in a professional manner, what I, give to troops, so to speak, as far as my ideology and where we should go. So if I get that opportunity, then yes, I think it would be better, because I'm gonna be innovative. I'm gonna bring new ideas. I'm going to challenge the status quo. We're not going to settle. We're not going to get political as in, oh, I have to do this because that's going to appease these people. I got on this show and I said it from the first day. What is wrong with doing what's right?
Right.
Mhm.
I don't care how you feel at the end of the day. What is right?
That's what the question should be. That you know, the golden rule. You know how we used to have
Right.
golden rules. Okay.
This nation was not founded on what is right.
Right.
No.
But you know what? Just because it wasn't founded on that, we know the difference. We have been in civilization and we have modernized and we have gone through so many different societal changes, you know, social constructs all through time. I mean, doggone, we're in 2021. Okay, and we all of us sitting here have went through the eras changing and everything, but it seems like one thing stays the same, and that's the injustices that surround African American people. Instead of it getting better, and I see it getting worse, especially for the people that are coming behind us. It's getting worse.
Okay, so define what worse means, because some would say, rewind, 200 years, this has got to be better than it was 200 years ago. So, but I'm not. I just define worse for me.
Okay, when I say worse, I'm talking about 200 years. We didn't have the Constitution that said we had rights. We have them now, and we still don't have rights. Constitution, when it was made, it was the same thing then as it is now, with tweaks and repeals and revisions. Okay,
But we still not equal. You're absolutely right.
Still not equal. And even though, look, the 14th Amendment, that's what it was devised for, to give natural born citizens equal protection under the law, 14th Amendment. Okay.
So it's worse. So you're saying it's worse because with the advancement, you would expect that gap to be like that. And the fact of the matter is, the gap is still however big it is. It might be smaller, but it's still.
Can I add something here? Dr. Martin Luther King said, we shall overcome. Well, we are overcoming, and we made a lot of progress, but we have not overcame.
I agree.
And so we're still in the process of becoming. Now, I have to say this, and Anita got involved in this past week. I posted our last show on a Facebook page called Waukegan Revisited, or Waukegan in the 60s and the 70s. And that on that Facebook group are white people that go back and look nostalgically at Waukegan in the 60s and 70s.
The good old days.
Yeah, and if you go and look at it, it's all white oriented, the Coca-Cola girl and downtown Waukegan, and they were resentful of this because we were talking about Black issues of this broadcast. And they requested that we take it down because we were talking about issues that are relevant to the African American community. The old white folks didn't want to hear it. And in fact, they were offended by it.
Shut up and
more
dribble.
than one of them said it.
Shut up and dribble.
Did you take it down?
I did, because it was their site and they requested it to take it down. And I
okay, because I was getting ready to say something. Okay.
You know what, Mr. Reed, and I understand that this is addressing Black issues, but at a certain point in time, if we're gonna want to heal this community, because it's just not a Black community,
absolutely,
you're gonna have to incorporate
It impacts them. Yeah, you're 100%, but they don't want to hear it.
Make sure, because we got some real good people out here, and I call them brothers and sisters, and they don't look like me, and not skin color, anything like that. So I just want to say.
That's right.
But there's a segment of the community that don't want to hear what the issues are and don't want us to make changes.
And so I ask Mr. Adam a question? Okay.
Certainly.
You are a Caucasian male.
Jewish male.
He's beige.
Okay.
He's a brother from another mother.
Okay, I hear you. But in and I don't know how this is going to be taken, but I just have to know.
Go for it.
Why are Black people looked at in the Caucasian race as so much different, so much below Caucasian people? Okay. And I'm saying that because in looking at everything, it's like the Black people are the most despised people. And why is that?
I can answer that. It's called a herd mentality. It's a herd mentality. When you see one group of people, hating on another group, the other, there may be other minority groups around them, but because of their wanting to assimilate with the dominant group and not wanting to be hated on, it's easier for them to join the herd than to stand outside of it.
Because they blend. We're the only ethnicity that cannot blend.
That's not true.
I don't believe. No,
that's not true.
No,
we got some that can blend really well.
There are white people who will certainly see you as fellow Christians.
Yes.
First, second, and third. And also, I got to tell you, I don't see myself as part of a Caucasian race. I'm definitely a human being, not. And
I don't mean that to offend you.
No, I'm not at all offended. And okay. I grew up like the only Jewish kid on an army base, so it would be really hard to offend me. What offends me is having 3 guys punching me out, calling me a Christ killer. That's offensive. But except it taught me how to fight really well, so maybe I should thank them. So yeah, like I said, I identify as Jewish, though I'm not very observant. I do believe in God, so that's one God, and so that I guess makes me Jewish. But you will catch me eating some tips over at Hillary's, So so I do work on Saturdays, and as far as the way I was raised, seeing Black folks is, my folks, my people, my relatives would they use the word schwarz, which is just a Yiddish word that just means black. And what I learned about Yiddish is the meaning of the word really is all about how you say it and what's in your heart when you say it. So it's, for a lot of my family, saying that word, it was matter of fact. Like, it's a schwarz, means it's a black person, not necessarily a bigoted. The funniest thing about my people is we were dark-skinned people, and we all know that dark skin is the dominant gene. But we lived in ghettos. The word ghetto was originally constructed for the Jews in Italy.
Absolutely.
And we lived without rights for hundreds and hundreds of years, and so Jewish women were raped. And there was so much rape for so many hundreds of years that even though the dark skin is dominant, we became a light-skinned people. Some of us. There's still a lot of Black Jews out there, by the way. Strangely enough, with all the European racist mentality, there is a strange sort of racism that I guess wasn't in Israel back in the early part, and now is seeped in. That kind of colonial European racist mentality has become a part of our identity, and a lot of, I think, Jews do see themselves as white people now, and I think it's kind of like people forget where they come from. Like they got a chance to sit at the table and be part of, as Rita was talking about, the dominant group, the herd, and people sell out on the ethics and the heart and soul of what I think is a very ethical faith, and it just becomes convenient just to buy into the haterism and and forget what it's like to be from an oppressed people ourselves. I mean, we have had our share of oppression. I don't want to get into a contest about it. I once had a conversation with a fellow organizer, and he seemed to want to make it a contest with me, and I was like, "Say, when was the last time someone threw 6 million African Americans in the oven?" But I mean, I meant that in a glib way. I mean, I don't really. There's no contest.
Well, what you're saying
Oppression and hatred is oppression and hatred. So it's like it's not a contest. It's a shame, a collective shame for all of humanity that that we cannot have a better world just because of these divisions that we cling to, where we can at least see each other as people first and foremost. And I think that's a big part of the problem. Like when you say Black Lives Matter, and people want to say, I get one of my friends sending me emails about that the founder of Black Lives Matter bought a big house, or that the Black Lives Matter is anti-Israel, or this or that, and it's just like it's just about stopping unarmed Black folks from being murdered.
So
that's it. And why do we want to change the subject to this, that, and the other thing? And it's just like. And why wouldn't I back something like that, just as a human being who's just...
Well, the time really flies. The time really flies really quickly, and we're nearing the end.
Yeah, give me the soapbox. I jump right on that thing and go to town.
Yeah. But what you said was very relevant, very important, because we know about the Holocaust and how one group of white folks hated another group of white folks because they were Jewish.
I didn't see us as
and killed them.
They didn't see us.
And so we have to find. It's human nature to find somebody to hate. The Irish people hated the other sects of the Irish people. And there were internal wars. So that's human nature. We got to find a way to overcome it. And in America, we're demanding it now.
Well, when you said we got to find a way to overcome it, though, we got to remember this. In Scripture, I forgot where it is in the New Testament, but it says, "As far as it is up to you, you be at peace with all men." Okay?
Yeah.
So it's an individual call to everyone that calls themselves a Christian.
That's right.
The reality is we're all sinners. Okay, every human being on this earth, other than Christ, we're all sinners, and because of that, what I find right now is the claim of those who call themselves Christians that don't act like it.
Yeah, don't practice.
The Scripture calls those people out.
Yeah.
So
Hypocrites.
as far as it is up to me, I'm to be at peace with everybody. I'm to work with everyone, okay? If I see something, I've told my pastor some things that are just wrong. The church had a chance during the World War was that 2 or 1? I keep getting the numbers mixed up. 2 with Hitler. The church had a chance to stand up for righteousness then. They didn't. They had a chance to stand up for righteousness at the inception of this country. They didn't. Not all of them, but enough didn't. Okay. So here we are today. It's the same thing. We have to figure out ways to work in our sphere of influence to bring about positive change. And sometimes that's going to make people angry, and it may cost each of us our lives. Who knows? But we have to step out in that faith and that belief. And
well noted. And that's a great way to end the program with what you just said, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Hester. That was well said.
Very eloquently said. So let's do our roundtable. Everybody's got a chance to share about 2 minutes. Starting with you, our honorable state representative.
You always start with me.
You're
Well,
so
I just
great.
want, this was a great segment. Obviously we got a lot of work to do. I do like what Mr. Hester said, because we all do have our circle of influence. And if we all utilize that, it's just like, you tell two people, if we love two people and then they love two people, we can spread this around. I don't think we'll ever truly end racism, but if we can make the love party the dominant party, we can go so much further to, having, that equality that we're all looking for. I want to be the race of love, not the race of hate. We realize that there are individuals out there, unfortunately, who didn't receive that love. They were raised in a hateful environment, and that hate transferred as they grew up. So we do have an opportunity to change things around, and to provide a better world for our children and our children's children.
Absolutely.
Thank you, the honorable state representative Rita Mayfield, 60th district. We'll go clockwise. Dr. Jacqueline Thomas.
I'm not
It's
clockwise.
his clockwise, not yours.
Oh, yeah, because I'm like waiting. I'm not that way. I just think that it's unfortunate. First of all, I agree. I think this is a really good piece we had this evening. And thank you, Mrs. Hannah, for calling me. I actually thought it was canceled. I think it's unfortunate that our previous administration advocated and allowed for a culture climate to resurface.
Yeah.
I agreed, that things aren't perfect, but they were a lot better. They were a lot better 6 years ago, 5 years ago. And someone gave people the idea that it is okay now to take America backwards. When he said, let's make America great again, he was saying, let's take it backwards. And that's unfortunate that 70 some million people may have shared that philosophy. And you realize that laws do work, because laws prevented certain behavior, from occurring. Now, this man now says, as of January 6th, what happened in our capital was a disgrace. It was an international disgrace. And due to someone who's saying it's okay to have that kind of behavior, people now are trying to take their hoods off. I was at a mall about in January, after the January 6th, and the guy's flying his Confederate flag and said, this is our country again. That wouldn't have happened in where I lived 5 years ago. It wouldn't have. People wouldn't have felt comfortable, but now they're comfortable. So it's like we've got a lot of work to do. I think Mr. Biden, Mrs. Harris, I think they're doing a good job. 100 days, whatever. People want miracles overnight. Doesn't happen. It took 4 years to reverse this, and he did a darn good job, unfortunately. So I think we need to continue to have platforms like this, conversations like this, professionals like this. And can people see better, they will do better. They need to see more of this type of a platform.
Thank you, Dr. Thomas. William Chris King.
Sorry about that cutout. You know what? At the end of the day, what I want is for everyone to raise the level of expectation. Because I believe if we do that, then we weed out some of this trifleness that's been going on. And when I say expectations, I'm also talking about accountability.
Yes.
I'm not even talking about, police officers, teachers, I'm talking about holding those in administration accountable. There would not be, if I'm state's attorney, it wasn't there, a chief and a sergeant coming on saying, yeah, we don't train like that. That's not our guy, because they would have been in somebody's office, preferably the mayor's office, tending some letters of resignation and or suspension for what happened, for allowing this to happen on the street. It happened under their watch. So if I could leave with that expectation, raise the level, and accountability.
Yeah.
Mr. Farmer.
As usual, this was a good conversation, and I apologize again for the technical difficulties, and I'm sure I missed a lot of good conversation. But I think that here we are in 2021, and we're still talking about the same issues that they were talking about in 1821,
Yeah.
1921.
1621.
Exactly. And it's a shame that we're at this point, and it seems like we're not going forward, we're going in reverse again. And so
Yes.
we've got a lot of work to do, and I mean a whole lot, because back to this policing issue, I was reading, me and Mr. Hester had talked about this case earlier about and down in North Carolina that was essentially executed last week. And the lack of transparency and the lack of accountability on the police department's part. And they had the family there today, and they showed them a 20-second clip of their loved one getting executed.
Mm.
And that was it. And so essentially they said, this is what you're going to get. You take it, you like it, and you move on. And so, and I think one way we get back to some sense of community is if we had a community where Dr. Thomas, as a teacher, as an educator, lives next door to Chris King, who's a police officer, next door to Adam, who's a legislator, next door to Rita, who's a representative, and on and on and on. And you have that sense of community. Teachers, we need teachers living next door to us. We need police officers, firefighters, and that sense of community. And until we get that and actually hold one another accountable, I don't think we'll ever change. And I'm not just talking about, it doesn't have to be a community of like people who all look alike. If we're on the same mindset, we have the same family, attributes, everything, and get back to that sense of community. So I mean, we just got a lot of work to do. And I know I wake up every morning feeling more and more disillusioned about this world because of what we see. And again, the lack of transparency and the lack of accountability in every way. So, but I do enjoy this. I enjoy talking about it, and it gives me some sense of relief. So I thank everyone on this panel tonight, brother.
Good.
Thank you, Mr. Palmer. Anita?
Yeah, I just want to say that this has been very, very good, very good dialogue, and I am certainly hoping that many people hear what we're talking about, and I want us to continue this.
Mr. Hester? Well said, Mr.
Well, I thank everybody for participating in something like this, and to open my mind up and my thought process is up. Make sure, am I on track? Am I not on track? Does it make sense? Does it not make sense? Too many people aren't willing to say that they think wrong about something, okay, and to change their thinking. We have to be willing to do that. I look at the inequalities. We look at COVID right now, for example, and if I could have my way, I would teach every young person. Now we can qualify young, whatever age you want to start at, 20, 30, 40, and lower, but to teach them about how money works. Because what happens is this, we got to understand, at 18, you graduated from high school, and now you have to go out into the world. As far as the world is concerned, you're plugged into that economic system. It's turned and locked. You got to get someplace to live. You got to get a car, and nobody taught you about money. There's not but 5 states that even require 1 semester of financial literacy in high school.
Yeah.
And we got millions of graduates every year. So the country thrives on a lack of knowledge. And scripture talks about without knowledge, the people perish. So one of the ways to combat the epidemic of ignorance, for lack of a better word, is to try and help people learn something different, learn how money really works.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Broad.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Reed for inviting me back to the panel. It's an honor to be included, and I appreciate hearing everything the panel had to say. And I wanted to, last time I was on, we talked about my crisis of faith that I was having, or I talked about it a little bit, and we as a group talked about a lot of that stuff here today. original sin of this country, you know, the slavery and the genocide. Obviously, we're still carrying the scars as a country, and African Americans, people of color in particular, carrying a large share of the burden. And we have a ways to go. I was reading earlier today a collection of Dr. King's essays, and there was an intro by Dr. Cornel West, and he was talking about a lot of these things. It's called The Radical King. He was talking, and Dr. King back in 1968, a little over 50 years ago, was dealing with the same issues some of you are dealing with, the despair at the enormity of the crisis, and how not much had changed, and how trying to make those promises on paper meaningful and come true. And my Jewish faith teaches me that I have to help mend the world, and I'm trying to find the love and discipline in my heart to do that. And one last thing is, we were talking about how Mr. Hester was talking about how money works. So I wanted to plug this, The Deficit Myth by economist Stephanie Kelton, talking about modern monetary theory, because just as we're fed a lot of lies about race and any number of things, I think the general public is fed a lot of BS about how the federal government works with money. Because we always have money for a tax cut for the wealthy, for another war, to bail out the banks. Where's the money for reparations? Where's the money for Medicare for all? Where's the money to clean up the toxic waste in Waukegan, put people to work, build low-income green housing, new Green Deal, Green New Deal? I mean, we could do all that. All the government has to do is say, yes, we're going to do it. And it's that simple. And so if you get a chance, The Deficit Myth, Stephanie Kelton, there's a lot of buzz on that. And The Radical King, a collection of essays that I'm reading also. So that would be good. That deals with a lot of what we're talking about. So on that note, shalom.
Well, thank you, Mr. Broad. I'd like to end the show with something that I found on Larnell Farmer's Facebook page. And Larnell, I hope you don't mind me sharing this, but I also put in the People's Voice this month in honor of Mother's Day. I found a picture of an old Black man, 85 years old, leading his 84-year-old wife around. And this is the short story that goes along with it. Just picture in your mind an old Black man, even on a cane, leading an old Black woman around. He is 85 and insists on taking his wife hand in hand wherever they go. When I asked why your wife is distracted, like she wasn't following anyone, he replied, she has Alzheimer's. So I said, will your wife worry if you let her go? He replied, she doesn't remember. She doesn't know who I am anymore. She hasn't recognized me for years. Surprised, I said, and still you continue to guide her on the way every day, even though she doesn't recognize you? The elderly man smiled and looked into my eyes. He said, she doesn't know who I am, but I know who she is. Mm-hmm. He is the love of my life.
Mm. Wow.
That's very sweet.
So with that said, love and happiness to all the mothers out there. And we touched upon this, but didn't say it directly. It's all in our heart.
Absolutely.
Not in everybody else's heart. It's us. What we do and how we respond and act to people is based on what we have in our heart. Absolutely. That said,
working on it.
Watching. Adam?
Working on it.
Okay. With that said, thank you all for a wonderful evening, and thank you for watching. This has been the Urban Town Hall. Have a great night.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.